Academic Writing Task 1 is the one part of IELTS where learning vocabulary does improve your score quickly. After seeing thousands of student answers, I've picked out the 7 groups of words that matter most. And not just for your vocabulary score, but for writing stronger answers overall. So let's start with the first, comparisons. In Task 1, you're almost never describing just one thing. You usually have 2 or 3 lines, bars, or a few countries to deal with. In this example, we have coffee and tea sales at a small cafe over 1 week. So how would you describe it? Quite often I see something like this. Coffee started at 60 cups and rose to 110. Tea started at 90 cups and fell to 75. The numbers are right. And here we see information about coffee and then tea, like they have nothing to do with each other. This is not what the examiner is after. What they want for you to do is to compare the data. Don't describe each line on its own. Like this. At the start of the week, tea was more popular than coffee, with 90 cups on Monday against 60 for coffee. More popular is a clear comparison. Halfway through the week, the 2 drinks meet and swap places, and there are a few good words for that moment. On Thursday, coffee overtook tea, with 95 cups sold to tea's 78. Overtake means something that was behind moves in front, like a car overtakes another car on the road. And there are a couple of alternatives. Surpass means to go beyond, to end up higher than something. It sounds a little more formal, and it suits a line that keeps climbing past another. And if you want the whole thing in just one sentence, keep it simple. Tea began the week ahead at 90 cups, but coffee overtook it midweek and finished well in front at 110. One sentence. Both drinks, the trend, the comparison, and the numbers to prove it. Not all the numbers, just the key numbers in our view. The examiners I work with always say that they notice in Task 1 if a person is comparing or just listing. Now, lines are one thing. A lot of Task 1 questions don't give you lines at all. They give you a pie chart full of percentages, and percentages require one important skill. Let's have a look. Here is a pie chart. How students get to university. Cars, buses, bicycles, and walking. These are probably American students, as we see a lot of cars. The simplest way to describe it is 50% of students are car users, 25% are bus users, 20% are cyclists, and 5% are walkers. This is a slightly exaggerated example, but it still demonstrates 2 problems almost everyone has. So first, every sentence has the same verb, are. Second, percent is repeated in every single line. The examiner would read it as a narrow range of vocabulary. So let's fix both. Starting with the first, let's swap are for a better verb. 3 good ones. Account for means to make up a part of a total. Cars account for 50% of all journeys to campus. Next, represent. It means to stand for a share, to be equal to. Buses represent 25% of the total. Make up means to form part of the whole. Cyclists make up 20% of students. These 3 are interchangeable, so you can rotate them. Use account for in one sentence, then use represent in another. This variety improves your score. Let's talk about the second problem, percent in every line. You don't actually have to say percent every time. There are better ways to show the same figure. One is to point to the biggest and smallest slices. The largest share, the smallest share, or the most common something. For example, the car is the most common way to travel with the largest share at 50%. Or walking has the smallest share at just 5%. Another way is to compare two slices. Twice as many students travel by car as by bus. That's 50 against 25. Or 10 times as many drive as walk. That's 50 against 5. And one more small thing that adds variety, how you name the group. So instead of car users, you can say students who drive, those who travel by car, or students who commute by car. Little changes and they stop your writing repeating itself. Vary your phrasing. And there is one more option. That 25% for the bus. You don't have to say 25% at all. And that's something you're gonna learn next. Fractions and proportions. We see them in a lot of high-scoring answers. And you don't have to repeat the same percentages over and over. You can switch to fractions where it sounds more natural. So here is something for you to keep in your head. So 50% is a half, 25% is a quarter, 20% is a fifth, and 10% is a tenth. And 33% is a third. Now, let's put them on our pie. So half of all students travel by car. A quarter travel by bus. A fifth cycle to campus. And notice you can say the same fraction in more than one way. A fifth is also 1 in 5 or every fifth student. They all mean 20%. A fifth of students cycle to campus, or 1 in 5 arrives by bike. What about walking at just 5%? That's too small for a neat fraction, so we just say a small proportion. Only a small proportion, roughly 1 in 20, come on foot. Now, you may be thinking our pie chart is very clean. 50, 25, 20, real exam charts almost never are. You get 23% or 34%. So in this case, you hedge. Around, roughly, or approximately all mean close to but not exactly. And just over or just under mean a little more than or a little less than. A figure of 34% becomes just over a third. 23% becomes just under a quarter. And one last pair for when you want to step back and describe the whole chart rather than one slice. The majority means more than half, and a minority means a small part, well, definitely less than half, but a small part. The majority of students come by car or bus, which together make up 75%. Only a minority cycle or walk. Now, most of the time, I don't tell IELTS students to go and learn new words. I tell them to use the words they already know. But task 1 is the exception. This is a task you almost never do in normal life. So the specific language for it is worth learning because once you have it, task 1 becomes easier. And that's exactly why I put it all in one place. And inside my IELTS academic pack, there is a guide that lists the essential words and phrases for Task 1, with example sentences for every task type, charts, tables, maps, and diagrams. So whatever task you get, you have the language already. I'll leave the link in the description if you'd like to check it out. And now back to the charts. We've compared data and we've presented numbers. Now let's talk about the thing Task 1 is really built on, describing how numbers change. Here is a line graph. Visitors to a museum over 5 years. We see a clear rise, then a clear fall. And the basic version sounds like this. The number of visitors went up from 40,000 in 2019 to 70,000 in 2021. Then it went down to 35,000 in 2023. A bit repetitive. And we used the same verb, went up and went down. It's really useful to learn a few stronger alternatives. For going up, you've got rise, increase, climb, and grow. For going down, fall, decrease, decline, and drop. And two quick things about the verb form. Our data is from the past, so we use the past tense. And a few of these are irregular. So rise becomes rose, grow becomes grew, and fall becomes fell. And each one needs a preposition to add our number. So you rise to a figure, or you rise by an amount, or you go from one number to another. So here is an example. Visitor numbers rose from 40,000 in 2019 to 55,000 in 2021. Task 1 is marked partly on range. Can you show more than one way to say something? And the number went up twice on our chart, so we use two different verbs for it. Then they climbed to 70,000 the following year. And on the way down, after that, they fell to 35,000, or numbers fell to 60,000 in 2022 before dropping to 35,000. So when you read the chart, you can use a few different words to describe numbers going up and down and cycle through them. But there is still something missing. Rose tells the examiner the number went up, but it doesn't tell them how much. Let's look into it next. We have two lines, both are going up, but they're not similar. So how would you describe each? We've got two ways. So the first is an adjective with a noun. So we say, there was a slight increase from 50 to 53. Or there was a sharp increase from 20 to 88. The second way to describe them is to use a verb with an adverb. Same idea, the other way around. So the figure rose slightly from 50 to 53. Or the figure rose sharply from 20 to 88. Now, the size words themselves. Keep them in three groups. For a small change, you can say slight, marginal, or minimal. For a medium one, moderate. For a big change, sharp, dramatic, considerable, significant, steep. You can also use the phrases to a small extent or to a large extent. Sales grew to a small extent. Now, a few verbs already carry this size inside them. So when you say jump and soar, both mean a big sudden rise on their own. You don't need an adverb with them. Don't say jumped dramatically. Jumped is already pretty dramatic. Or you can say profits soared from 20 to 88. Okay, but charts don't always rise or fall so neatly. Let's talk about that next. Let's discuss 3 types of changes you may see. The first is the flat line. Here, the number barely moves. Well, in our case, it's completely flat, but if it goes a little bit up and down, it's still pretty flat. So we can say the figure remained steady or leveled off. And there's another word you may want to memorize: plateaued. A plateau is a flat stretch, so when a line flattens out and stops changing, it has plateaued. Just memorize the spelling. There are a lot of vowel sounds together. So sales remain steady at around 55,000 across the whole period. Or after 2015, the figure plateaued. And one small thing to remember: the preposition. Something stays steady at a number, remains steady at 55,000. And the second trend is if the line jumps around, up, down, with no clear direction. This one has a single perfect word: fluctuate. It means to rise and fall repeatedly. Prices fluctuated throughout the year, moving between 40 and 70. Next, you may see some high and low points. And very often, you want to point at the top of the line or at the bottom. So, for the highest point, the number reached a peak, peaked at, or reached its highest point. For example, visitor numbers reached a peak of 92,000 in 2010. For the lowest, it hit a low, it reached its lowest point or bottomed out. They hit a low of 38,000 2 years later. We've now covered the movements and the shapes. There is one more piece that ties the whole answer together: time. So, how to talk about the period itself? We have a line over 20 years. In your answer, you definitely want to describe the whole period. So, when you sum up the big picture, the phrase you want is over the period. Over the period, sales rose overall from 30,000 to 85,000. 2 more that sound similar but aren't quite the same. Throughout the period means all the way across, from beginning to end without stopping. And during the period points to something that happened at a particular moment inside it. So, throughout the period, sales stayed above 30,000. That happened at every moment during this period. Or, during the period, sales reached a peak of 85,000 in 2020. You should also point to the start and the end. So if you want to give a single number for a particular moment, a nice verb is to stand at. It means to be at that point. At the start of the period, sales stood at 30,000. By the end, they reached 85,000. Or you may split the period into chunks. You don't have to go year by year, and you don't have to just talk about the whole period. For example, you can take it in halves. The first half and the latter half, sometimes called the second half. So, in the first half of the period, sales rose and then dipped. In the second half, they recovered, climbing from 45,000 to 85,000. And one more useful word, a decade, which means 10 years, because data often comes in decades. A decade after year 2000, sales set at 45,000. Now, having the words is one thing, but putting them together in a full answer that fulfills every requirement is the next step. So in this video, I'll show you how to write each paragraph of your answer and make sure it meets what the examiner is looking for. Everything you've learned today goes into it. So thank you for watching me today and good luck with your preparation and your exam.